Good morning. Today is July 2nd, 2024, and this meeting of the Council Subcommittee on Water Issues is now called to order. And I just wanted to remind everyone that it is Rodeo Week and Western attire is recommended. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Chair Rusing.
Here.
Lois Fruworth.
Here.
Ted Gambogi.
Yo.
All present.
Thank you. First item.
Approval of the June 4th, 2024 Water Issues Subcommittee meeting minutes.
Do I hear a motion?
Yes, I would like to approve the minutes but amend item F.
Okay, continue.
In item F, we specifically had a discussion followed by an agreement of a follow-up item that the ADWR report would be corrected and reissued with also some context or insight. And Public Works has agreed to that follow-up, and so I just want to make sure for purposes of the record that the minutes are approved, but with that as an amendment at the end of item F.
Okay, thank you. Any comments, Mr. Gambogi?
I wasn't at the meeting, so I can't.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes with the amendment that the comments from Councilwoman Lois reflecting the request for more information is part of the record.
Second.
Passes 2-0.
Thank you. Okay, next item, please.
Presentation and discussion regarding the amended 2022 Water Management Policy.
Well, good morning, Water Issues Subcommittee. I'm Brian Reese, the Water Resources Environmental Services Manager for City of Prescott Public Works. Per your amended 2022 water policy, guidelines 11 through 13 establishes a semi-annual water budget for residential and non-residential projects. The budget set for January 1st through June 30th, 2024 was 25 acre-feet for residential projects and also 25 acre-feet for non-residential projects. So the table that you have in front of you shows the residential projects that were approved between the time frame of January 1st, 2024 and June 20th, 2024 at the time that we have to cut off in order to create these memos. There was a total of 10 residential projects approved in that period. Each one of these projects was less than 1 acre-foot per year and was administratively approved. The total water set aside for these residential projects was 1.7 acre-feet out of the 25 total budget, leaving a total of 23.3 acre-feet available. However, subsequent to the establishment of this memo for this meeting, on the June 25th voting meeting for council, you heard and you approved the Senator Cottages residential subdivision, and with that approval, we are setting aside 8.61 acre-feet for that project, and that will bring the residential budget down to 14.69 acre-feet left in this period. And that pretty much completes the period at this point in time. We'll start with our new budget on July 1st. So there might be a couple of administratively approved projects that may come in that period that might slightly reduce the budget, but 14.69 acre-feet is about what we're ending up with on the residential side for this budget period.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. And then this table right here shows the non-residential projects. So there was a total of 11 non-residential projects that were approved through June 20th, 2024. All of these projects were under 1 acre foot per year and were administratively approved. The total of water is 4.25 acre feet, leaving a remaining non-residential budget at the end of this period of 20.75.
Brian, I
Yes.
have a question. The first item, ERAU Embry-Riddle Complex, is that the one out by the airport? Or where is that exactly? Do you have any details on that?
Honestly, I don't have any details. It was administratively approved, so we didn't really review that.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have any real details on what that project.
I was just curious because I'm such a supporter of Embry-Riddle. I'm always interested in the details, so I can get that from community development.
Definitely.
Thank you.
So, that summarizes the non-residential projects, 20.75 remaining for the period. And our last,
So these two non-residential and residential items, January 1st through July 1st are...
through July 1st will end the period. We had to cut off putting the data and putting the tables in on June 20th
Yeah.
in order to get them ready for this meeting.
But it looks like we're well within the budget for
Definitely.
that.
Yeah, the only thing that could be approved at this point would be something that's administrative and
Okay.
that they have to be less than 1 acre foot.
All righty, thank you.
And then our last table here shows is a table showing existing contracts approval between the same period, January 1st through June 20th. There was a total of, which show a total of 22 projects on this in the table here for that period. 21 of those projects are residential projects, and then one project, the Garage City number 15, was commercial project. With existing contract. We've subsequently, as we were reviewing this after we submitted it, we see that we have a little bit of a formula error in our table there. The 21 at the bottom, total residential, should total to 3.57 acre feet, not 4.25. So I apologize for that. We're trying to fix all the little bugs out of this spreadsheet that we're trying to use and make our life better, but sometimes it doesn't work out that way.
Say that number again, please.
3.57 acre feet for the total residential under existing contract. And then the total non-residential of 5.9 is correct. But when you add up those two numbers, it should total 9.47 acre feet. So a little bit lower than that value shown on there. 9.47 was the total of the existing contract water set aside for this period.
Councilwoman, any questions?
Yeah, I do. I have a question about the out on Iron Springs. We approved a RV park, and I'm not seeing that. So if you could look into that and get that added. I know we approved it and it went on and council approved it. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Council member, we'll check into that and make sure that we get it onto the appropriate tables.
Okay, and could you please give us the details, especially for the public, as to why we have two charts like this?
Oh, yes. So per our water policy, if a development or a parcel has an existing contract that provides for them water, then we honor that contract, and it doesn't go through the process of going through the water budget, either the administrative approval or it's administratively approved. It doesn't go through the process of the water budget and subsequently going through the water issue subcommittee and ultimately to voting meeting for approval.
But it's important data, I think. Thank you for including this, because we need to keep track. Even though it's technically outside the budget, we still need to know how much water is being approved.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Okay, and that pretty much concludes the presentation on the water budget for this period. We will start fresh with our new water budget on July 1st, as approved through council at the last meeting. If there's any other questions, I'd be happy to try to answer.
I believe it's the Water Policy Committee now that's going to be doing the water budget every 6 months.
Yes, that's my understanding.
Okay, just wanted to make that perfectly clear. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Item C, presentation and discussion regarding a PFAS update.
All right, good morning. My name is Nathan Graham. I'm the Water Operations Superintendent here for the City of Prescott. I'm filling in for Steve Wolfers. He's on vacation, so. Okay, so I think last time Steve Wolfers did a presentation on this, the EPA had not announced their final rule for, PFAS. So since then, they have, so I'll kind of go through that. So on April 10th, 2024, the EPA announced the final PFAS rule. The table that you guys see up here shows what chemical have an assigned MCLG, which is a maximum contaminant level goal, and an MCL, which is maximum contaminant level. So if you look on there, the PFOA and PFOS, so the goal is 0, but the actual MCL is 4. So if any of our EPDSs, which is the entry point to distribution system, comes up with a 4 on any of those, out of compliance. And if you look below, you have those 4 other chemicals, the PFHXS and the Gen X, all those. So that is part of a hazard index. So there's that math formula. I think, you guys have?
Is that something new? I don't think we've seen that hazard index.
No, it's fairly new. Yes, it's part of their, they just come up with on their rule. So, yeah, if you kind of look at the formula, so it's, I won't bore you with the math, but yes, you take all those, divide it by the number they give you, and then if you are above a 1, then you're out of compliance as well. So with that being said, they kind of set in motion. So implementation under the rule requires public water systems to conduct initial and ongoing compliance, monitoring for the regulated PFAS, implement solutions to reduce regulated PFAS in their drinking water if levels exceed the MCLs, and then inform the public of the levels of regulated PFAS measured in their drinking water and if an MCL is exceeded. So the timeframes on this, so within the first 3 years, 2024 to 2027, initial monitoring must be complete, which is quarterly sampling at our EPDSs, which we have been doing that since.
Could you clarify EPDS?
EPDS, entry point to the distribution system. So where that is so like in Chino, all of our wells go to the 2 5 million gallon tanks, and once it leaves those tanks, that is the entry point to the distribution system.
Is that where the blending takes place?
Yes, in those 2 tanks out there in Chino.
Okay, because
Yes.
blending currently is our mitigation.
For arsenic, yes.
And we've been blending anyway for arsenic, so maybe that was a good thing because it helped reduce our PFAS concentrations.
Absolutely,
So-
yeah. So, the airport wells, those are a different story because those go right into the distribution system. So each well is its own EPDS. So, but Chino, yes, it gives us that luxury of blending.
Okay. I'd just like to make a few comments just for the public. People need to know that PFAS, PFOAs, it's a worldwide issue. It's affecting everyone. In fact, in Europe, they're looking at banning PFAS, PFOAs, and the other 15,000 chemicals that make up this group, just banning the non-essential ones because, there's some that are used for defense, things like that. But, like I said, it's a group of about 15,000 chemicals produced by 3M, DuPont. Why we needed 15,000 chemicals to do the same thing, I don't know. But they're organic and they bioaccumulate in the environment and also in our bodies. And, we're doing the best we can to mitigate it, but we still have a lot of research to go into the long-term effects, because right now the research is on mice, and they're just extrapolating how it affects humans. So we're doing our best.
Well, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. It is a worldwide problem. I mean, everybody's having to deal with this,
Yeah.
for sure.
And then ironically, the Generation X chemicals were developed that were supposed to be safer, and they
Yeah.
turned out to be worse than what they replaced.
Yeah. Yeah, it's unfortunate. But yeah, so, and then pretty much from there, so yeah, 2024 to 2027, we have to start monitoring. 2027 to 2029, that's when we have to start reporting, to ADEQ, put it in our consumer confidence report, our results and stuff like that. And then 2029, that's when we have to comply. If we're above, it's
Yeah.
when it gets bad. So
I was going to ask, maybe Brian can help out. Do we have enough data and information to start looking at a filtration system, or are we just going to continue blending for mitigation?
So I know we have drafted up a RSOQ for, consultant to kind of give us a good idea of what technique we should actually use or look into. So I know, and I think that's going out in the fall, is what I hear. So out to bid.
Okay, thank you, because I know we've been poised to do something, but we just needed more data and to make sure that we're heading in the right direction with our filtration efforts.
Yeah.
Nathan, is it a fair statement to say that at this point in time, we don't exceed any of the MCL levels shown on the table?
No, we do not exceed any of those. The only one that does is Airport Well 5, which we aren't running, to the system. So
Moving on to this chart that shows the second quarter report of all of our wells. I noticed that well number 4 out in Chino, that was rehabbed in 2020, it's the only one that's just all zeros. And I was wondering, is there any way that can be drilled deeper or the pumping capacity improved?
for well 4, I'm sure it could. I mean, that is our number 1 producing well, at about 3,200 gallons per minute. But yeah, that is a weird one, isn't it? It's always a zero,
Yeah.
which is
I
great.
was thinking we should celebrate that.
Yes, I know.
And maybe drill a few more wells right next to it. I don't know, but it looks like it's in the magic spot so far.
Yeah, and we mimicked, because we just rehabbed Chino Well 3 as well, so we mimicked, as far as all the materials, stainless steel shaft, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And so trying to see if maybe that, helped out. And we did. We made the contractor, as far as all the pipe fittings and stuff, use the PFTP, pipe tape.
That was with Fan Environmental.
Yes.
Yeah, because they're the ones that did the well number 4.
Yes.
So I think they do a fabulous job for us.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All righty. Any more comments, Lois? Ted?
Nice job, Nathan. I got a question for you.
Okay.
Well 5, on the previous chart, it said PFAS was 8.16, and on this chart, it says it's 0. Why is that?
On Airport Well 5? Which chart are you looking at?
The number is 0. So it's 0. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
But the well is closed, right? So how are you measuring anything?
Well, we're still testing it, for sure. In ADEQ's eyes, it's still an active well. We are not.
The numbers have gone down.
It does fluctuate, absolutely. You know, it does fluctuate a little bit. So
That's not a little bit, that's a ton. 8.16 to 0 and 10.35 to. 3, oh, wait a minute, 3.83?
I don't have the. Yeah, well, and there again, I mean, we're talking parts per trillion, and the labs are still trying to get this dialed in as well. They really are.
Nathan, just a question. On this 2024 chart, you got well 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yep.
Then you start EPDS, which is the combination of all the Chino tanks. And then you start all the other EPDS. I thought EPDS number 13 is Airport Well 5, which you can see the PFAS is off the charts. So is Well 5 up above where the PFAS is 0? Is that one of the Chino
Yes.
wells
Okay, so
that
that's what you're
feeds
looking at.
into EPDS? Okay.
Yes. Yes,
So that
that's-
explains. You can't compare what Chino versus Well 5 versus
Yes.
Airport Well 5.
Okay, so that's what. Okay, I was trying to make sense of it. So yeah, up here, you know, well 1, well 2, well 3, well 4, well 5, those all pump into those tanks, which then is the EPDS 11. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's important to note that when it's all said and done, the hazard index is 0.7296, almost 7.73, just a little bit under the 1.
yeah,
So it's, still, I'm still comfortable keeping it shut down.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, it's we haven't run it, and so it's
And
just out there.
It looks like we're now testing for one of the Gen X chemicals, hexafluoropropylene oxide dimer acid. So, obviously we can't test for all 10,000, 15,000 of them. So these are kind of like have said in the past, the Sentinel ones.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, continue.
So I mean, that was pretty much. I was just giving an update on the rule. So we're going to be following that, and then from here we can just have an open discussion if we want.
Also, our annual testing reports have come out.
Yes.
Are they going to be posted on our website and discussed? I guess we can put that on the agenda for next time.
Yes, so they are. They are on the website. We do have some out here in the lobby. I did bring
Okay.
a handful that I can give to you guys.
Okay,
as well.
great.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it is. It's hot off the press.
Okay, because this is kind of the time of year where everyone has to get the results.
Yep.
Hopefully, we got an A+.
Oh yeah. No, we're definitely we meet or exceed all state and federal requirements.
Okay. Well, I just want to remind the public that we're doing everything we can to keep our drinking water supply safe. But like I said, this is something that not only affects Prescott, but the nation and the rest of the world. This is a global issue that everyone's going to have to
Yeah.
take charge of. Okay.
Yeah, we're fortunate out here. A lot of our wells are out there in Chino, rural community. So it's yeah, we're far away from big city stuff, industry, all that stuff. So yeah, we're very fortunate up here.
And just keep it that way, maybe.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. All righty.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item E, Educational Series Number 2, Presentation and Discussion Regarding Water Resource Management Regulatory Requirements. Sorry, item D.
Good morning, Subcommittee. This is Leslie Grazer, Public Works.
Leslie,
And-
before we get started, I would like you to introduce yourself and tell us what your job description is and your responsibilities are for the committee and for the public.
Happy to do so. So Leslie Grazer, I'm Public Works, Water Resource Project Manager. So the projects would be the Decision and Order of Assured Water Supply is one of the projects. Comprehensive Agreement Number 1, the scientific study and efforts related to the Big Chino water supply. And then, as we like to put on our job descriptions, and other duties as assigned. So,
And you're being too modest, don't you? You work very closely with our state regulatory agency, ADWR.
yeah, I actually worked for them at one time. So fortunately, I was able to bring some of that know-how to the city 14 years ago. I think I'm in my 14th year here.
Well,
But it's enjoyable. I'm gonna run you through a PowerPoint that shows you just the basics, because I think sometimes these get lost along the way. And sometimes maybe it's unclear what your water resource management staff or Brian's water resource management environmental services staff does. So just from your memo, it said it was requested that water resource management staff provide the subcommittee with a brief, focus on that, educational presentation on various and timely topics. And so the topic that we thought was appropriate today was the regulatory requirements. So this is your quick rundown of where we're going to go today, and it will be fairly quick. We're not going to dive into the details. So it's who regulates water, and then we're going to focus primarily on entirely, I think, on the Department of Water Resources. And we'll go through groundwater and wells, surface water and dams, underground storage facility. And then we'll do a regulatory summary, just so you have a snapshot that you can keep if you need it, or you just contact Brian's group, and we help you out whenever needed. So who regulates water? The first one is the Department of Water Resources, and also the Department of Environmental Quality. As I mentioned, we're just going to look at the ADWR on the left side today. However, I think we've already had that discussion that there is a consumer confidence report that's out, and that's a requirement of ADEQ. And that will be covered probably next time we meet to maybe dig into the details a little bit more. So the Department of Water Resources, there's actually 24 total, but this slide's only going to hold about 12 of their activities across the state and in various ways. So just to highlight a few of them, we do live in an active management area, so we follow those rules. There's adjudications that affect us, and we're in the HELA adjudication area, so we watch that. Assured and adequate water supplies. We have a decision in order of assured water supplies, so your team is watching that. Even though we don't have Colorado River supplies, that's probably a pretty good key indicator of what's going on across the state and in the Southwest. And it just goes on from there. So I just provided a few, or only half of those things. And some of their activities at the department don't necessarily affect the cities. So I'm going to move right into groundwater rights in an active management area and the city's wells. And there's probably just way too much information, so I just put in yellow the ones we're going to look at today. So the city, and I don't think I have a pointer here. That always gets me every single time. I wish I had a pointer. Anyways, you'll see at the top that it says 56- and then a number. So the prefix has a meaning, and that means it's a service area right. And then because there's so many service area rights within the state, everybody gets their own number. So the city's number is that 003017. And we use that for tracking. And what a service area right does is authorizes cities, towns, and private water companies, irrigation districts to withdraw groundwater to serve their customers. And our service area, and you hear us talk about it a lot, and we show the maps over and over again, but in the more dominant blue there, that's our city limits. But then you also see a lighter blue, which is outside of our city limits, which we serve. So our service area is a combination of both the darker blue and the lighter blue shown in there. The upper inset is the Chino Valley area.
Yeah,
So-
thanks for bringing that up, because a lot of people don't realize how extensive our water and some of these get sewer too, like Highland Pines. Do they have? Are they on the sewer system, or they just get water and
just
do
water.
septic? Similar to Mountain Club, they get city water, but they're on septic. So we kind of have a very complicated, extensive area. And then let's not forget the tribe too. We furnish water to the tribe.
Yes, ma'am. So yeah, it's always, I always like to lock down when I'm talking with somebody, what landmass are we talking? What area are we discussing? Because that helps drive it. And reduce confusion sometimes, or somebody says, but I know, and I'm like, but we do have service beyond our city limits, and we have certain things that are happening in certain areas that it's not happening in another. So so I guess this is just a quick blip on that, and I think you're very familiar with that now. So I'm going to jump over to the wells. So on your far left is a picture of the Prescott Active Management Area, and then those purple tones are the different municipalities or the incorporated areas. So of course, Chino Valley's at the top, and then you see Prescott off kind of to the left, Prescott Valley to the right, and Dewey Humboldt. So we have several incorporated areas. And what I wanted to show you was on the right-hand side is basically the Department of Water Resources database on wells, and what that color coding is saying, and we can just read the legend there. So we're taking their data points for every single well that's registered in our area, in this Prescott Active Management Area and beyond. You can see it spills out. And what they were showing there was the age in years. So if it's greater than 61 years, it's a very light color, and it almost blends in too easily. But what we're seeing as you get to the darker colors, less than 16 years ago it was drilled, it's pretty dark in certain areas. So we're having a lot more wells that have come in more recently than in the past. So that's not really a big regulatory thing, other than you're not alone out there. There's lots of wells out there, and they have different characteristics.
Leslie,
Yes, sir.
you have a number, what they all add up to?
Inside the active management area, I think we were close to 11, maybe 12,000. But you can see we spill out. The Williamson Valley area is getting, on the edge, is getting pretty dark. So I think we're about 12,000. I can get you an exact number. It goes up every year. Okay, so just to look at ours really quickly, and back to the regulatory idea, we do have service area wells. They're recognized by the state, and they're recognized by a 55 prefix and then a 6-digit code after that. So our top wells that are, the ones that are produced that Nathan was talking about earlier, and that are tested, you see this 606, 021, and the whole series. So this is the wells in Chino Valley 1 through 5. I put some of their basic information on there. Usually everybody's interested about the static water level. So I didn't pull the more recent numbers, but they don't fluctuate too much. 2020, they range from 170 feet to 250 feet below land surface. So they take the measurement basically at the well. They have to back it off for the casing height. I'm discussing it down here. You can't even see it. So if they take the depth from the top of the casing, they have to subtract it off to get it back to land surface. And then more on the science side, we move those into elevations versus just a below land surface in feet. But we won't look at that today too much. So what you see with the blue dots with the W on it, those are the city's wells, while the reds are just all the other wells in the area. And those could be piled on top of each other. They're not in their exact location. They're to a 10-acre centroid. So looking at the airport well field, why this looks different is that this map is outside of city limits. This map is inside city limits. So we have the cover on in the purple that shows now we're inside city limits. So the airport well field, same thing. A 55 number represents a well, and the static water levels of interest, which is the greatest interest usually, is 430 feet to 480 feet below land surface.
Councilwoman, you have a question?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Which well of the W's there around the airport, which is the infamous well 5 that is no longer
Well 5 is at the top of the map.
very top? Thank you.
Yeah. So they were drilled in a way that they kind of like bounce around like like a pinball game. So if I had a pointer, I'd point them out, but that's the easy one. It's at the top of the map there. Okay, moving along, so you know those as well. But you should be aware the city has over 110 wells registered in their name. And they could be non-exempt wells, your service wells. They could be exempt wells, things that we just picked up along the way, small things that don't go, a lot of things don't go into our distribution system. They've just been acquired over the years. And some are drilled just for monitor's sake. But when I pulled the city's records, we're at about 110 overall service area wells, random non-exempt wells, random
Councilwoman?
exempt wells, and monitor wells.
Thank you. I do have a question. I was so surprised when I was doing the pre-reading and saw that we have 110 wells, and then I understood your 3 different types there. So I had a question in terms of how do I think about those 110 wells over the 3 different areas that you've got there? And do we have any of we have the wells, but we're not operating them at all? Maybe we got them grandfathered or something along the way, and we just pretty much shut them
Horse
down.
trading.
Yeah.
So how to think about them. So a non-exempt well is something that's pumping greater than 35 gallons per minute. So it's usually a larger producer. It could be a service area well. It could be one of our wells associated with the recharge facility. But I can split there too, in that some of the recharge wells are monitor wells. It's a whole mixed bag. An example, maybe the city picked up a piece of property near Willow Lake long ago off of Calgary. Found this the other couple years ago, where there's a well on site and the city just acquired it with that purchase of land. They were using that land as more of a buffer or something related to Willow. So you have those kind of things. Or you have really historic stuff that something out of Del Rio Springs, we were out there on site and there's a well on the property, but that doesn't go into the production system of the city. So yeah, we have a lot of kids, so to speak. So we track those things. Your water resource management team, this is just an example of like how many prefixes and types of prefixes that we have that we kind of quietly behind the scenes manage for the city, and then work in strong partnership with water operations so that we understand what's happening, physically with the system as they're operating it. Does that help a little bit?
Well, I asked if at some point in the future, can we please understand how the 110 wells break down across the categories? 'Cause
I can send you a spreadsheet.
That'd be great. I'm interested in seeing, well, not a detailed 10-page spreadsheet, please, just a recap. Like 60 wells are non-exempt,
lump 'em.
or 40
lump 'em.
wells are
Yeah.
exempt. That kind of. Thank you.
Yeah, so I keep spreadsheet records where we can.
Simple for me, Leslie. I'm still
Yes,
learning.
ma'am. Yeah, we don't want to overload because there's not enough time to do all these, look at all these things in detail. But for us, for our job, one of the things that I made sure the city had was we had our records in order as best we could, hard copy, electronic. What do we have out there? What should we be aware of? And they kind of cycle through. So yes, ma'am, we can do that. So I'm going to jump ahead to surface water rights and dams. And this isn't a fun one to look at either. There's no pretty pictures, but basically it's just a quick recap, and you want to look at the source column on the left and the reference on the right. So what it's telling us is that Watson Lake has its own sever and transfer, an S&T document, and we need to be aware of what that water amount is, our sever and transfer of claim that we picked up with the irrigation district when they sold that right to us. Same thing with Willow. They have a designated S&T number, a sever and transfer. We have what's called the old Weston Ranch stock pond, and I think there's actually a little bit more. So they have a 30, I think it says 38. I'm having a hard time seeing that. And then we have a whole bunch of various surface water rights because the city was run at one time off of Goldwater Lake, cleaning up the surface water.
Because I remember back in the 80s, we actually pumped it.
You
and I
were still
remember
using it.
drinking it, and it would taste a little fishy around August.
Yep, surface water is different than groundwater, for sure, different chemical makeup. So what you're seeing is Goldwater is collecting through the watershed and then probably hopping over to the Hassayampa watershed. You had all these different rights, the city did. And so those are represented by a 36 number, a 33, a 4A. And it was important at one time to kind of show exactly what those numbers were. And here again, we keep the records on that. So if something comes up and somebody says, oh, well, they're thinking of making a claim. We had one not too long ago where we checked and we said, actually, we are downstream of them, so we would prefer them not to activate a claim on water above us because we're expecting that water down here and we have a more senior claim to it.
Yeah,
which
that's
is not.
interesting. You mentioned that Goldwater is in the Hassayampa River watershed.
It's in the Granite Creek, but the city had acquired Hassayampa at one time and had to move the water up and over. Hassayampa actually drains to the Agua.
Right.
To the Hassayampa. That's why it's called Hassayampa. But through the miracle of engineering, they were able to move that water up and over the divide, and it would drop into Goldwater.
Okay.
It's fun history.
You know, the Senator gold mine has been in the news, and water contamination has been a main concern. So it sounds like it affects us all.
Yep, we had to keep an eye on all these things. So quick blast through surface water documents and dams. Underground storage facilities. So these have their own set of numbers as well. The prefixes, there's several. So there's 70 numbers that are prefixes, 71, 73, 74s. So we'll move probably, I hope this is in logical order. A 71 is the actual facility. So we have a permit from the state for the actual facility. The 73s are tied to the water type. So it's your water storage permit, and then a 74 is your recovery permit or permits. Your 70s are your accounts. So they're your long-term storage account, or our newer one is a long-term storage account that's specifically for permanent recharge. So once again, just this is what your water management team does behind the scenes. We're watching all these prefixes and making sure that we are in order. And of course, it's hand in hand with water ops. We have to make sure we're all talking the same thing. So basics on this, our permit allows for 12,000 acre feet per year to be stored in our, as pictured, recharge facility. We have 4 monitor wells on site, and the purpose behind those is quality and any mounding that we're looking for. So as we're recharging, you're building up a mound, but if you start having that interface get too close or it has any effects laterally, we have to respond to that, keep up on those permits. There are 9 recovery wells. Not all of them are at the facility though. So our service area wells are also identified as recovery wells. On site, there is only 1 recovery well. It has its own permit number, and it's solely to pump water because it's that close to the recharge facility. Solely pump it and move it over to the golf course. It is specific in the permit that way. And we have, a heightened annual reporting requirements. It's almost a subset of that bigger annual report that you've been presented in the past. So that's the recharge facility. It has its own bunch of its own numbers. And I'm at the end here. So this is just the summary here. So the city has a water service area, and I showed you the 56 number, all the 55 numbers. I just put XXX in there because I was going to list all of them. We have decision and orders that we didn't really talk about, but you're fully aware we're active in that. So that's another prefix of an 86 that we track. Moving down to the bottom, the surface water, we have sever and transfer numbers. We have claims that vary from prefixes that have a 3R, a 4A, and through. We have state dams, and we didn't talk about those numbers, but they have their own regulatory number, there's 4 of them, 13.13, 13.14. So that's Watson Willow, Upper and Lower Goldwater are the 4. We have a community water system number, and we didn't go into this at all, but we have that prefix as a 91. And then we have these other kind of stragglers that I put in the other categories, where a 25 at the very bottom right is for the Antelope Hills. It's an industrial permit. Moving up, I don't know why I'm starting from the bottom up, but then we have what's called statement of claimants, and those are part of your adjudication. So we're watching those numbers. It goes on from there. So that's your quick run through behind the scenes, I guess, what we do. And sometimes you just see those bigger points in time if we have activity in one of these areas that needs to be addressed. Now, similarly, the question mark is, okay, so the water withdrawal, the annual report, annual water withdrawal and use report that we file every single year. I just made you a quick slide, and what we have to take from all those different permit types we have, these are the prefixes that are involved in that report. So it's a big job for somebody to go through the annual report. It's a big job for water operations because we're relying on water ops and wastewater. I mean, it's both water types. We're relying on their spreadsheets. So when they're doing the daily work, and that's why we stop and thank them Nate and crew, and wastewater side crew. We thank them because if they're not taking the data, we can't be successful in filing an annual report. And so it does go hand in hand. Quickly, though, I put down all the prefixes in the service area wells and others that are relied on or are required to be in the report. The underground storage facility gives us a workout sometimes. The decision and order, we have to report on our, are we pumping more than they said is in our DNO? Are we pumping less? Are we, what are we doing related to our assured water supply? So we have specific sheets that we have to fill out related to that. Our turf facilities, so that's going to be Antelope Hills Golf Course, Prescott Lakes, and who am I missing? I'm using the old name, Hassayama.
Capital Canyon.
Yeah, Capital Canyon, Troon. It's had multiple names, so we have to, even though they have to file, we have to file too. So it's a cross check. Did they they file one way and we filed another? Sure hope not. We need to make sure everybody's data is in order. And then the last bit of data that isn't necessarily tied to a prefix, but water delivery to other rights. So we do serve other service areas. For example, like was mentioned earlier, Highland Pines. We send water out to them, but long ago they had their own service area right. We have to be working with community development on our housing units and population because they need that as well in the report. Our customer types, we work tightly with the finance department. They made sure they built the billing system so that we have each category that the department requires and we can file on that. Service area line updates. Okay, so then we also have to submit a map every year that says how our system has expanded, because once you have a new line that goes out, they put a 100-foot buffer around it, and that is really your service area. And what they're trying to do is protect you from well drilling to some extent. So if somebody comes in and there's state statute and an ARS on this, that if you're within 100 feet of a designated water provider, you have to go through some hoops if you're going to drill a well. So that was the quickest I could do that rundown of what we do.
Well, thank you, Leslie. That was very helpful. I think it would impress our public that are listening that when you turn on your water tap and clean, healthy water comes out in an amount that's adequate, that a lot of work goes on behind that to accomplish that. And I just want to thank you and the rest for all the hard work that goes into meeting all these regulations. And that's why the developers want to get annexed into the city so that they can get city water and they don't have to go through all this themselves.
They don't have to get their own prefix. We have it. But yeah, this is a big team effort.
Thank you. Yes, I agree. I was impressed doing the pre-reading, and more so today that there's experts like you all out there taking care of all of this so that as citizens, we don't have to worry. And so I appreciate the work and this brief recap. Thank you.
Yeah, and it also makes us a more attractive place to live in, to knowing that we have plentiful, safe water.
Correct.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Nathan. Thank you, Brian.
Item E, presentation and discussion regarding long-term water management plan draft outline.
Okay, I'll let the slides come up. And while we're doing that, your council subcommittee memo was fairly long, and I'm not going to read through the whole kit and caboodle here, but basically what happened is the city has been looking at a long-term water management plan for quite a while, and then you had the mayor's ad hoc who brought forward additional recommendations. So they did work on the water policy, but they also brought in a subset of 3 things that they thought were important, and the council as a whole approved it. But what they said it is recommended the city begin the process to develop a long-term water management plan incorporating the water resource management model and appropriate legal documents. And this, stretches out even to your prefixes, like, do you know what you're managing? They also said it is evident the city is lacking a long range water management plan to carry the city's water health and safety when there are changes from one elected and leadership bodies to another. So it's kind of like the living document that each group of council members or leadership, city management level has, so they can keep the course. You're going to wiggle around a little bit, but there's kind of a course that is probably best for everybody's health and safety. So what I'm bringing forward today was that group was looking to have, let's see, it said here, staff, assesses related work items and propose that a plan, just an outline, would be available by July 31st, 2024. So this is what we're showing you today in its most basic form. So a little bit of background, a little bit of a mind map, and I'll show you what that is, the outline, and then we'll move to some questions as well. So this is the mind map. So what would this long-term management plan need to have? And we can't go through every one of these blocks, but I'll just start at the top, almost like 11 o'clock, not 12, but it says current supply type. So of course it's gonna have lots of information about your current supply types, how that relates to your water and wastewater operations, your possible future water types, and you can see those listed out radiating from that block, how these management plans work, how your regulatory landscape looks, what your council wants, how your city's going to finance it, how your community development is engaged in this, timeline completions, that one should say, and updates. So a lot of times plans get built and then they get shelved and nobody's like keeping up on them and conditions change. So there has to be some kind of mechanism in that plan of how often do you go back to it, what triggers some kind of change in it. This water resource management model, history, and on around. I guess maybe you should get to the water education piece. If your public doesn't know where you're going and why you're doing the things you're doing, you kind of have an uphill battle. You can either have cooperation in getting somewhere or confusion, and it works a lot better to get out of that burning fire if everybody's knows where they're supposed to go if they need to.
That brings up a question. It said in the memo that we're trying to have continuity and avoid changes on council. The mayor gets changed every 2 years potentially, council members every 4 years. And how do you plan on having this management plan being immune to changes in politics? I mean, you may have a council that is pro-sustainable growth, and then you may have a council that is growth at any expense. Is this going to be codified or in the charter, or how do you plan to prevent it from just having a council that just says we're not going to do any more on it?
I think there's probably several things. The guardrails would allow for a little bit of back and forth where you have different councils or leadership that wants to do things slightly different. But overall, when they fall outside of that, then that is a red flag, oh, wait a minute, I think we're going way outside of our, general health and safety kind of maneuvers here. It would take strong leadership, from a city management level to work with their councils. To understand why they do things, including education. So you have to have ongoing education and say, hey, when somebody joins and they're like, and we have a water management plan, and we try to stay within these bounds because this is what, is best health and safety wise. And it extends not just health and safety, probably economic wise, and there's multiple things. And then strong support from your legal department too. You need all those things. And I'm probably missing something along the way, but I hope that answers the question that, and some kind of guidance in the document itself, like you have in other documents. When does it get reviewed again? Did it go stale in a certain area, or did something at the state legislature happen that would affect your long-term management plan?
True. Yeah.
And you need to adjust accordingly to it.
And
Brian?
I agree with everything Leslie just said. And if I was to add one more thing, it would just be that the document itself being a quality document based on actual factual information with all of the components that Leslie just talked about, provides a substantial document that people can rely on and that can be fall back on. Right now, the city doesn't quite have that, so it's easy to veer off course or to state something that might lead to a different conclusion. But if we have a document that provides that information, then people can use it and reference back to it when other alternatives or options come up. It can be referred back to this document, and hopefully it's strong enough to stand on its own.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Sure, and I'll just touch, oh, yes, ma'am.
Lois?
Yeah, I had one question, and I don't know that it necessarily fits in here or somewhere on the mind map. This weekend, a lot of people got to see Lower Goldwater closed and helicopters dropping down and picking up water and dashing off to Crown King. And, you know, that's servicing water outside of our area. That's our water rights. Though as a community, you know, we want to support those kind of efforts, you know. You never know when it's going to be us needing to tap in for the exact same reason. So where does that fit in our long-term water management plan, that we would continue to be a good community to other areas when they're in their most hardships
Right.
of days?
When do we share and give the helping
Correct.
hand? Yeah. So I jumped over it, but there's the regional partnerships on the left-hand side and infrastructure. So I've always tried to figure out with water, there are extensions, not just with the infrastructure needs, but an example like that where we know where our water levels are at in those reservoirs, which, you know, once again, thanks to water ops, they keep an eye on those things. And we know that we can say yes and not, you know, wander around and be like, well, I don't know if we can help you. It's like, yes, of course, you know, dip. Let's do that. Take care of those things. So and then also your current supply types at the very top where we started, knowing a good handle on those. So we've kept records over the years of those water bodies and what they generally look like certain times of the years. But surface water, so it's probably one of the trickier ones because it can be, you can go to zero, you know, and then you have a big storm and you're kind of full but not quite, and that one's a tricky one. So bottom line, yes, that's a valuable element. It goes to our own fire department too. I mean, there was lots of questions on the infrastructure side. When I came in, I'm like, how do we know we have water that we can push water heavy, hard that direction? You know, and that's where water and wastewater models come in, so that you know what the infrastructure can withstand and how long it can handle it in a crisis. Yeah.
Well, I find this really exciting. I am so glad to see us making some progress towards this management policy. And I just want to thank everyone. Now, let me just ask you, you're going to work with the Water Policy Committee and come up with a draft, and then it's going to proceed to council for a vote eventually?
I think it's a little bit to be determined. So now that you have this subcommittee of council and you have a water policy review and monitoring group, they were the ones who pushed that into the council discussion as part of your adoption of the amended policy. So staff will await, and that's, I think, where we're at, is awaiting what the direction and how is that all going to work together. So it'll work together, but as staff, I haven't been informed how it's going to work
Well,
together
it was
yet.
hot off the press last week.
That's right. So
Yeah,
we'll listen to you.
It's going to go to the other group. They're going to write the policy, and we're going to eventually administer it.
Right. But this is separate. You know, this is a plan. So we're looking at a plan. My hierarchy always like, well, if you have a plan, then you know what policies you need to have in place to support that plan. And once you have the plan, then you can roll down to your staff what procedures they need to do on a regular basis to support the policy, to support the plan. So as I said, we'll kind of wait and see, you know, when that information comes out to staff as to who's going to hit this long-term management plan
But
the hardest and where it's going to go. But it's going to probably start with your water resource management group in concert with some other departments. because we need their information as well. But this kind of brings me to my last slide. It seems super simple, but I thought that was what we needed today. Was you'll have an introduction that describes your planning philosophy, your regulatory environment, your description of your water service area and how you want to manage that. Then we're going to look heavily at supplies, look at demands, look at demand and supply management strategies. The community engagement piece is going to have to be there, and then you have to implement. There's no sense in having set forth a plan not to implement and say, oh, wait, that's kind of outside what we were thinking. If there's a good reason and we should be outside that thinking, then we make sure we know why. Otherwise, you try to keep yourself in that kind of safe zone that you know you can cover everybody. This draft outline, which is very slimmed down, is part of a grant. You probably remember we brought it to council, I can't remember what time, in late May. And we filed for a Bureau of Reclamation grant for about $40,000 to match our $40,000 to help guide the city through this process. We won't know if we've been awarded that grant until probably early August. So maybe at your next water, because we're not meeting in August, right? Are we meeting in August? No, we're not. So maybe you'll hear about it through some channel, and then it might come back to here in September. But that's the quick rundown of the long-term management plan thinking.
Well, thank you. Like I said previously, I find this really exciting, and I think this is the nuts and bolts of what the city should do and what the elected officials should do with the support of the city staff, and all work together to have a plan to manage our water resources, not only now, but for future generations. And I think that's why it's very important that the voters pay attention to this too. Thank you. Anyone else?
Welcome.
Lois?
I just had a question. Given both of your experience and background and perspective, is there any other communities out there in the state of Arizona that you would look as a benchmark to doing what we want to get done over the next year or two, or maybe not as good as what we'd like to get done, but a pretty good benchmark in comparison?
There are lots of good examples. And so where we looked first was Tucson had what was called a One Water Plan. And so we looked at their outline to see how they work through everything's pretty common, but it was their stakeholder process that was very intriguing. And also, we call it One Water, but here at the city, we used to always call it integrated. We wanted to integrate all sorts of different things. But you can even look into the Southwest, other places that have water management plans. I'd pulled one from Canada because I felt their groundwater management plan was pretty interesting. Even though we're not in the same locale, the philosophy, thought process. So yeah, we're going to lean into, existing wheels that might work for us and modify them if needed. And the Bureau of Reclamation is very strong. They have a document that guides water management plans, and so I kind of looked into that quite a bit as well.
Thank you. Brian?
We'll probably be picking up a consultant to help us through this, almost assuredly. And that consultant, some of the experiences and things that they bring will also lend to those to support us.
Just looking while I'm on my road trip this summer, what I could read while I'm driving along. So I will go look at Tucson and the Bureau of Reclamation. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Gambogi, any comments?
I have no comments.
Okay. Thank you. All righty.
Item 4, general announcements from staff.
Hello again, and I wanted to give a very brief general announcement on the 2024 water legislature recap. Let me see if we can, there we go. So the legislature has closed for the year or adjourned for the year. There were nearly 100, I think it was 95 water bills in total. That was a record. I believe last year was a record. So it's becoming a trend with these water bills. It's an important issue everywhere. by and large, water was a huge challenge for the legislature this year. I think you guys have been abreast of that and know about it. When I started to put this together, I saw that 3 bills that I could say had passed, had got signed. There was actually a 4th bill too. None of them really are going to really have a big impact on the Prescott area, the Prescott active management area, or Prescott in general. The bills that I show up there, those 3 bills, they were made to help specific issues for Queen Creek, Buckeye, other communities around kind of the peripheral of the Phoenix area for their 100-year assured water supply. They also helped with some groundwater issues on the Harqualallah irrigation on expansion area, and that area is over to the southwest part of the state, near La Paz County and Maricopa County. Have various issues for them, but it doesn't have much of an impact for us here in Prescott. What probably does in the future or on the periphery was that, there was no additional money for the Water Infrastructure Finance Authority was not made available in the budget this year. So that was, it's a disappointment to Water Resource Management, as that money was important for progressing along with big water projects that could help the state in this long-term future. So the legislature is going to have to figure out how they want to accommodate that in future. Yes.
I have a question
Lois?
about WIFA with the Prescott project, phase 2 or phase B or whatever, with the meters, the smart meters. I thought we were looking for getting some grant money out of this coming pool, so we're not going to be able to make that kind of progress without any WIFA funding.
I'd have to
help
check.
us.
I'd have to check on the specific finance available through the conservation program of WIFA and see how it was impacted. I will follow up with an email to you specifically on that. I do know that most of the literature that I was going through and the people I was speaking to were talking about the transportation project portion of the WIFA funding, which would provide for transportation of water outside the state. They were looking at desalination plants and other opportunities, and that's where I saw that the funding had been cut from. But let me take the opportunity to see if we can find specific details on future grant opportunities for our AMA project.
Yeah.
And kind of on the in association with the Governor's Water Policy Council, earlier we've had several updates on their progress and what they were trying to do, and they were broken down into 2 different subcommittees or subcouncils that were looking at rural groundwater issues and then more urban issues related to the bigger AMA areas. So out of that spun several bills, and for the most part, all of those bills died during the legislative session. So there was no progress really made in terms of groundwater for development in the Phoenix area or trying to create some type of template or structure for how rural groundwater could be regulated in those areas that need it. Some small takeaways. I watched a lot of the videos and the meetings that went through, there was farmers and other rural constituents who were coming to the table and wanted to be a part of being part of that rural groundwater regulation. And I think that's an important first step. So that was good to see. I think definitely they want to be part of the program. They just want a program that they can live with and that's not going to impact their livelihood. So hopefully that can lead to some more potential for some middle ground regulation. I know that the governor had said that she is open to doing a special session in August on water. water. So if Republican and Democrat legislators can get together and maybe try to find something that they can bring to her in that middle ground, there might be an opportunity there. I guess we'll wait to see if that happens. But that's basically that's kind of the in a nutshell of water legislature this year. I'd be happy to try to answer questions for you. I keep up as much as I can. It's super complicated, but I'll always, if you have specific questions, I can always dig up the answers for you.
Well, thank you very much. That was helpful. I'd like to comment that this year, I think it's going to be the first council meeting in October. We're going to have a study session with our 3 legislatures, Senator Bennett and Representative Selena Bliss and Quan Nguyen. Apparently, they've been meeting twice a year with the county. They meet twice a year with Prescott Valley, and for some reason, we've never met. So we are going to start initiating that twice a year, every 6 months, on a regular basis to communicate back and forth as to what the legislation is doing. We can let them know in a public meeting what we would like to see and pros and cons. So I'm really, really looking forward to that. And I'd like to thank our legislatures for agreeing to start meeting with us. It's been a long time coming. Any other comments? And I'm also hopeful that our governor, she seems to have water as one of her issues that she wants to work on. So hopefully we can put politics aside and work for the good of the state.
Definitely.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
Nope, not at this time.
Okay, this meeting is adjourned.